Hey, it's Janine.
And I'm Katie, and we're girls that just want to tell stories. And in this episode today, we're going to talk to you about the various types of traditions that you may have with your circle of friends, and maybe have a couple of ideas of new things that you want to try. So, in preparing for this episode today, just to kind of highlight what a tradition is, it's an inherited, established, or customary pattern of thought, action, or behavior. And a beautiful quote by Henry David Thoreau says, "The language of friends is not words, but meanings." And I really like that. Meanings
That's a great
gives
quote.
pause.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and
So
I
Jenny,
always
why don't you start out telling us about some fun traditions that we have?
sure, and we really felt it was important to kind of go down this path in this episode because I think people think of traditions. We're just coming off the holidays with their families. Like families have a lot of traditions, but when you really stop to think about it, there's a lot of traditions that people have in their friendships and rituals and things that they do that are regular and reoccurring year after year or week after week. So we wanted to give you some stories around our traditions and also some ideas if you're looking to form traditions with your circle of friends. So the first one that popped up in my mind, Katie, is the tradition that we started around this time of year. We're entering the year 2021, and we would be gathered around the holidays. Again, our circle of friends that did this particular tradition were from the same hometown. And even though several of us lived in other states at that point, we would tend to migrate back, right, north or
Yes.
west or whichever direction for the holidays. And so we would get together and we started the tradition of writing predictions and placing those predictions about each other and things that might happen to us in our lives in a champagne bottle. And
And I think it might have even happened by accident. I mean, I don't remember it was like a thought out thing. I feel like it was at the last minute, like, hey, let's do predictions for the new year, use this bottle. And
exactly. Yeah. No, I don't think there was, and it wasn't like someone read about it and like, hey, let's do this thing.
right.
We probably just emptied 5 bottles of champagne and like, hey, let's use one for this, and,
Right.
and often there were funny, predictions that were inside the bottle and it would be the next time our group got together. So it might not have been exactly a year later. It was just the next time the five of us got together, we would open the bottle, which for me is one of the funny stories when we first tried to do it. And, champagne bottles are pretty thick. And we're out on the curb, like trying to smash the bottle with no luck. Like we're like, maybe we should have thought through this
Oh
differently.
my
And,
God. I
and
don't remember that.
oh my gosh. And then I'm worried about, cutting my hand, like smashing the bottle and somehow slicing my
Oh
hand,
my
all that kind
gosh.
of stuff. So it was after several failed attempts that we get it open. And, the act of kind of unrolling the papers, because you got to roll them up to stick them in there,
Yep.
unrolling them, and then reading, what was on there. And, it was around thinking about the life stages we were in at an early point when we were doing this. It was maybe about when who was going to get married to whom, or who was going to maybe have a
Right.
baby, or who was going to buy a house, or who was going to move or get a different job. It was a lot of those things that happen in your late
I
20s, 30s,
right. When we were talking about trying to recall what we would predict, and the only one that I remember is one of the gals in our circle would say that Katie and Joe moved back to California. I'm like,
She would say it every time because that was not a prediction. She was practicing like the law of attraction there. She
that's
was
right.
willing you guys to move back, and she
Well,
doesn't let that go. Like she's still like that's the
yeah.
hope. Yeah.
Well, and here's the other thing. You're relying on the host to keep the bottles in a safe, memorable place that you can, go back and grab. I mean, I am certain there are bottles that that are MIA that maybe someday will show up and we'll open up and read the
Yeah.
predictions and have
Yeah.
a good laugh.
Yeah. So it's kind of the idea, almost a different maybe spin. Actually, it just came to my mind was the idea of like a time capsule, right? Where
Oh, great idea.
you take things
Yes.
at a particular moment in time that are meaningful, right? Going back to that quote, and, put it in, a container or shoebox, whatever. And then at a point in time, maybe it's a big birthday of the group, if you're similar age or whatever it could be. But the time capsule thing, I think.
Oh, we're writing that one down.
Yeah.
That's got to be a new tradition. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, spinning to another idea that we've done is, and you've seen it online, I'm sure, the recreating of the same photo. And we did that with just one image that I can recall. And the original image was, you girls came to Montana, and we went to Chico Hot Springs, which is this, beautiful little spot in Prairie, Montana in Paradise Valley. And if anybody has been there, it's just a super special spot. And they have a saloon. So we were at the saloon and we were dancing. And we happened to be outside. Now, it was summer in Montana and we were in shorts, so no need for all of the layers, but we asked the security guard to take our picture. Do you remember? We sat on the steps and the security guard took our picture, and it's just such a beautiful moment. And we all were just happy and having fun and maybe a little sweaty from dancing in the saloon. And I believe that I took that photo with us when we went to another tradition is, gathering for our birthdays. And we were in the British Virgin Islands celebrating our 50th birthday. And we recreated that photo on the catamaran that we were on. So those are great memories. And I hope that we can recreate that photo again someday.
Yeah.
And I know that you have some great traditions that you wanted to share with us as well.
I do, but I want to tell you that picture. So it was in a frame and out. It was one of my favorite because the way it wasn't, even though we asked the guy to take the picture, it wasn't posed in a way, especially now where people pose with their leg forward and their, best side.
Hand on hip.
We were sitting, like you say, kind of sweaty. We were sitting on this step behind a saloon. This is a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
And it was almost the posture and how we were sitting and leaning into each other was like when we were young, like how a group of teenagers might be sitting on the back porch of someone's home. So for me, there was this really nostalgic kind of feeling from the picture that I loved, which is why I kept it out. And then many years later, you took that photo and gave it to us as a gift in a canvas, right? Where someone had taken that and made it into a painting superimposed kind of thing. It was really cool. Right. And that's now hanging up. And it's fun to look back on the memories and then to, like you say, recreate them in a new place at a new time. And
it's a great tradition.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah.
We encourage our listeners to do that as well and share that with us.
Yeah. On our, Facebook and Instagram pages, we'd love to see your photo that you might recreate with each other. And then Katie, you mentioned our trips, which, for a lot of groups of friends, so our group and then other groups of friends that I have participated in, this idea of gathering in a place together where you have this focused time to be with each other that's not just a couple hours over a dinner or a phone call, really can deepen friendships in a lot of ways. And we started, like you said, often ours, because we were the same age, right? These years where it was the 40th or the 50th, we would make a effort to do that and to go somewhere. And even within those kinds of trips, you can set up your own rituals and traditions that you do and participate in together. Another group of girls that I had done some trips with as well, it's interesting to look at when and why you might need these traditions, right? So this other particular group, they all had young children, and similarly, some people had moved out of state, and their annual trip wasn't around somebody's birthday. It was just the one time a year where you leave the kids at home with their other parent and go and have a few days of girl time, literally. And so there's been a lot of talk about self-care during the pandemic and the need for that. But, this is 20 years ago now when these started and when everyone had little kids. And it was just an opportunity to say, hey, I need to step out of worrying about meals and carpool and just visit another city. We would choose every year as a different city, Nashville, Boston, and have a good time. And it's not being crazy. It was just,
Oh,
nice dinners and wine and sleeping in and
yes.
right. So what you get out of the traditions is, uh, meaningful in terms of the relationship, but sometimes too, it's just great for your state of mind and your well-being.
Well, the self-care, it's funny too, when you're with a group of moms, because we're all moms for the most part. There's been a few times where on trips, a couple of the gals will disappear, like we'll be hanging at the pool, a couple of them will disappear, and then they'll come back a half hour later with like a beautiful tray of food and drinks. So it feels a little decadent, like you're being treated, like you don't have to prepare the food, somebody else is going to do it for you. And it just like, those are the moments that I just reflect on that are just so, they're simple little touches, but you just feel so cared about. And I think our first trip tradition really began celebrating our 40th birthdays in a house in Sonoma. And that's the first time that we're just like in the same little county. But we were just isolated in this great little space right inside the vineyards. It was just so wonderful. And you really do, there's just that time where you don't have to brush away. You really can just share some really intimate, wonderful moments. And I remember we had bikes and we biked to downtown Sonoma where we had dinner at the Eldorado kitchen. Fabulous. And just, I remember I have this vision in my head of after dinner and drinks, we're biking back and the sun had been setting. And I felt like this could be Italy. Like this could be anywhere. It was just such a beautiful moment. I'll never forget it. Like just all of us in our fancy dresses on bicycles, biking back to the house in Sonoma. So, those
that's a great
alone,
memory.
Yeah, they're just beautiful memories. I'm just so happy to have.
Yeah. And sometimes if you're not out of your normal context, you're not going to go on that bike ride, right? Maybe you'll meet the friend for dinner, but you're creating experiences like that when you're together on a trip, really makes a difference. And we really thought, I think we talked about doing a whole episode focused around traveling with friends, right? And the value of that. And so I think we're going to save some of our stories about the British Virgin Island trips, which was our 50th. That was just really for both Katie and I, one of the best trips we've ever taken in our life. And that was large in part because of the people that we were with, right? It was an amazing setting, but it's because of who we were with. And
well, the other piece too is just what I talked about. Somebody cooked and prepared beautiful, fabulous meals for us. We didn't have to touch the kitchen.
Right.
And we were really just with each other, no outside influences. It was private. We just had such beautiful quality time together. I know I keep saying the word beautiful, but that's what kind of keeps coming up in my head. Yeah, it keeps coming up.
Yeah. And then I wanted to share one of my favorite traditions isn't my own. It happens to be my mom's. And she, in her early years, took up tennis when my sister and I were younger and has played competitively forever and ever. And she started with a group of friends that she met playing tennis. And they have this tradition of going to Palm Springs the end of January every year. This will be their 38th year.
Oh my gosh.
Going there and playing tennis together. And they literally stay in the same condo place, so with the same owner, which is just amazing. That's been that many years. And, they still play tennis. Now, some of them can't play tennis like they used to. Some of them have taken up golf, but the tradition of going together, and this is so important to them. And you figure through almost 4 decades, they have had all the trials and tribulations of life, right? They've had their children, their grown children get married, they've had grandchildren, they've had spouses die, they've had friends from the group move away. But even those that have moved away try to come out for the trip. And in the middle of this pandemic, which is raging right now, they are trying to figure out how to safely gather, right? To get tested and to, they'll do what they can to follow the protocols in this state to actually be able to do it. It may not happen, and it would be tragic, just like, the Rose Bowl got canceled. That's a tradition that a lot of people were saddened, but it couldn't happen. And I'm hopeful for my mom and her friends that they get to go. And it's interesting how someone else's traditions can just be a positive influence. Over the years, I would occasionally pop in for a night or a meal with, because that was just a couple hours from where I lived, and get to, be in their circle for a few hours.
Sure.
And I was like a little special guest, and it was just neat, again, for me to see my mom acting as a friend, right? Being part of the group, and not just being my parent, which,
Right.
no matter how old you get, your parent is your parent, even though, you can, there's a different kind of friendship that can come as you get older with your parent as well.
Well, and also it doesn't matter how old you are. Friendships are still so important and such an integral part of your life and your health and your, spiritual well-being and everything. It's just really, it's what we need.
Exactly. And that's why we hope just in our stories today, you picked up maybe a couple ideas with the champagne bottle or the time capsule kind of concept, or having the tradition of a trip. And we wanted to share just a couple original ideas as well. So Katie, why don't you talk to us about the idea of how music can be a tradition for a friend?
Yes. So I in, doing some research, I saw that, creating an annual playlist where everyone can add their favorite songs of the year. And so you label it 2021, and I think we should do this, and everybody can add their music and maybe a note. So as you listen to it, throughout the years, you'll think, oh yeah, I remember that great song. In fact, from our 50th trip, I don't remember specifically the song, but there was a song that was playing on when we were on the boat that has kind of, like now whenever we hear that song, it reminds us, it connects us back to that trip. So, it's kind of a dual purpose here. So I think that that's one that will be really fun for us. And I also thought, you know what, we really need to do one for the 80s. We need to do a music playlist, the best songs that we enjoyed from the 80s, since that's where our circle really began. I think that'll be fun.
Jack and Diane, John Cougar Mellencamp is going to be my #1 entry on that list.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. It is, amazing how a song can just bring you back to a moment that was, even 40 years ago.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Which is why I love all of the streaming services like Spotify and, Pandora, where you can have access to whatever music you want in the moment, including all the music that was important to us when we were growing up and in our earlier years, that at the time, man, you could pretty much only hear it if it was on the radio, or if you had the, $8 to buy the cassette or whatever it was back then. That was a lot of money.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, talk to us about this other idea that we saw that I think is perfect for, especially since our group is, we're long distance.
Yeah. And a lot of, people, we're attached to our phones, but we're not always like on the phone talking to people. So you can really use the text feature in a way that is quick and convenient to connect. And this idea of it's called Give Me 5, where you can check in with each other. And if I, send to you, Give Me 5, it means I'm asking what are the 5 most important things that are going on for you right now. And that can really tune me in. I know your stepson Kyle just had his birthday. You might put, celebrating Kyle's birthday. You might put, something that's happening at work. You might put something going on with Rocco, whatever. But it's so in the moment, because sometimes if weeks pass, heck, you recently had some, surgery on your mouth, like ouch. But if I maybe hadn't known that, I couldn't, check in with you on it either. So if that was something going on, then I'm like, oh, hey man, how's that going? Are you able to, are you recovering? That sort of thing. So it could be whatever. So this idea of give me 5, and there are lots of tweaks you could do on that too, right? Just having a prompt, even like, what's the funniest thing that happened this week? And you don't even have to, at a point, write that out. You could send some funny face emoji. When I send that emoji to you, you're going to give me your funny story of the week.
Oh, I like that.
Because I feel like every time we do talk, we kind of like, oh my gosh, I got to tell you this funny thing that happened. And right now, that kind of levity and we need to be smiling, right? There's a lot still happening in our country that is
very heavy right now.
Stressful. And so we can help each other, friends can help each other laugh in that way. And then you and I were talking about, I haven't experienced it, but I've heard other people talk about, there's different apps that actually encourage, friends to connect. One is called Marco Polo, if that's still out there, and it just allows you to kind of ping each other in a quick moment. So, you might not have even 5 minutes for a phone conversation, but you might have 5 seconds. And just the other one that I know you play is that Words with Friends. So it's even sometimes
Yep.
the games can be a tradition or a ritual. Maybe it's every Sunday afternoon. In fact, it's so funny because so John has something that he does with friends. It's this game, but it's not on an app. It's not on the computer. It's literally, he has dice and a board, and his friends who are in other parts of the country have their board and their dice, and they play this baseball game somehow. When you roll a certain roll, you get a single, and they're actually playing a baseball game without,
Oh my gosh.
together, right?
How funny is that?
And that
Good
is
for them.
I know, and that is something they did when they were kids, right? And then
see, John has a tradition.
It does, and it came back when everybody was kind of in lockdown. It kind of, came up as a way to, play together in a way, have some interaction without physically being together. So I thought that was kind of a fun one too.
I want to loop back to one thing because it was a tough week for our nation.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was doing some notes for this podcast and thinking about recreating our photo, the original one that was at Chico Hot Springs, for anybody that's feeling anxious and just needs to take a deep breath, go to chicohotsprings.com and watch the video on the homepage. It shows this remarkable place, and the video is so calming and soothing. I just watched it this morning and I thought, oh my gosh, our listeners need to watch this. It's just so beautiful and relaxing and calming and just kind of brings you back to center.
And during times like this, your friends can be the ones that you turn to just listen, for you to kind of let whatever emotions you're having come out, or to, in some cases, give a different perspective, whatever it is.
Sure.
But maybe more
and mostly a judgment-free zone too. Like
yes.
It needs to be people that you really feel like you can say, you know what, I really don't understand what's happening. What do you think? This is what I think. Yeah, I agree. It really is. You need to talk it out.
Right. So I think, if you haven't reached out to someone and you're still feeling, some of the confusion and, like you said, Katie, heaviness around what's happening, it's a good time. It's a good time to pick up the phone and actually talk to somebody.
Yes, I agree.
You to do that.
I agree.
Yeah. And, with our theme today around traditions, we're going to start looking to, hoping to hear from you guys on our Facebook and Instagram pages. And we'd love to know what traditions you might have with your friends, and we can mention them in future episodes. And what we want to do is encourage you to think about what are things that maybe were traditions that might have fallen off, right? You could kind of resurrect them and start them up again. Or maybe there are new traditions you want to try, suggest to a friend or a group of friends that you can then have ongoing, and maybe 10, 20 years from now, you're telling stories to your kids about, hey, we started this great tradition. So that's really our call to action in this episode, is think about what are the ways that you can, over time, in a repeated kind of way, connect with your group of friends in a meaningful way. Because like that quote was saying, friendship isn't about words, it's about meaning.
Yes.